This is the Mickey Miles and More podcast, your one stop for information on Disney races, Disney vacations, Disney theme parks, and more. Now, here are your hosts for the Mickey Miles and More podcast, Michelle Scribner-McLean, Chris Eliopoulos, and Mike Scopa.
Welcome back, Milers. Welcome to another show. I am your host, Chris Eliopoulos. With me, as always, is Dr. Michelle Scribner-McLean. Hello, Michelle. How are you doing?
Hey, where are your sunglasses?
No, that was like a thing just to
that was the last week thing.
I think people get a little annoyed with it, but
this week I liked it. I have a shout out today. I have a few. We have some new subscribers, so Mike and I thought we would give them a shout out. So some of them are Paige Hall, Carla Lieber, James Knowles, friend, Matthew Milheiser, also a friend, Natalie Morales, Emerson Pratt, whose birthday it is today, and Richard Peets. Those are just some of our new subscribers. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you so much. And also with me today is the wonderful Michael Scopa. Michael, let's hear some weird quote that I'm not going to get.
This is a tough one, guys. You ready?
Okay.
If you like vegetables, fresh food, and flowers.
That's it?
It's a sentence fragment.
I know it's not a full quote.
Well, if I say any more, it's too easy.
Is it from a defunct attraction?
No, this is up and running.
It's tough to be a bug.
Whoa, it's the very last song, and Tough to Be a Bug.
Nice.
Yes. Mile High Waist, right?
I thought only a nerd would get that.
Well, the one who got it right, anyway, is our guest tonight, Len Testa. Len is the co-author. I'm going to read this one. Co-author of The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World, The Unofficial Guide to Disneyland, The Unofficial Guide to British Theme Parks. He is also, you did Las Vegas as well?
Las Vegas, the Disney Cruise Line. Yeah.
But I thought if you go there, you can't talk about it.
I heard about it. It was
stays
different.
there.
Completely different.
Okay.
We should talk about Vegas. There are some fantastic deals going on right now.
I'll bet. Gee, I wonder why. He is also the person responsible for touringplans.com, which I use often whenever I go down to Disney. And he is the co-host of the Disney Dish podcast. So welcome to the show, Leonard.
How's it going, Chris? Hey, Mike. Hey, Michelle.
Hey. So we're going to do, in case you don't know the show yet, Len, we do about 20-minute shows. And we're going to have you on for two, if that's okay. On the first one, we're going to talk about you recently flew from your home up north down to Florida. And you just recently visited both Universal Studios and Disney Springs. So we wanted to talk about that on this show. And then maybe on the next show, catch up on what's going on in the news and the future for the Disney parks and stuff. So tell me, Len, how hard was it to get through the airports?
It was remarkably easy to get through the airport. I didn't take – so I have an apartment in Manhattan, and I was going to our condo in Celebration, Florida. I went through Chris's great state of New Jersey. I flew out of Newark, EWR. I didn't take the subway or the train there. I could have, but at the time I left, the train was still restricted to essential workers only. So I Ubered over there. There's only like 20 people in line now at any given TSA checkpoint. Getting through that was super simple. There were about 100, I would say about 100, 110 people on my flight. So I flew JetBlue, and the way they were doing it was 2 people in one row, with a seat between you, and 1 person in the following row, then 2 people, 1, 2, 1. It just so happened that the rows all around me had only 1 person in them. So I was in a row all of myself. There was 1 person behind me. And so we were staggered. So it was like this with a seat between us and a row between us. And they did the opposite pattern on the opposite side. So if you had an aisle seat on one side of the plane, there was no one across from you on the aisle on the other side. So maximum spacing out. I give JetBlue a lot of credit for figuring out that checkerboard pattern for everyone.
And everyone wore masks, right?
Everyone wore masks, and everyone is following all of the protocols that they said they would. The interesting thing about flying to Florida is if you're flying from New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut, you have to fill out a form when you get to Florida that says basically you agree to quarantine for 14 days and you're completely responsible for all of your food, your housing, your medical care, and so on.
Wow.
So
But
that's
there's
fine.
nothing
So
legally requiring you. You're just agreeing to it.
No, it's a misdemeanor punishable by up to a fine of like $250.
Oh,
okay.
Wow.
And there are exemptions for healthcare workers, for people traveling for commercial activity, which was me, and so on. But the interesting thing is, you fill out the form, and when you get off the plane, there are two people waiting for you. One is from the Florida Department of Health. The other one is from the National Guard to make sure you don't run away.
Oh, wow.
So it looks like they're taking it seriously. So I give them the form. They review with me the guidelines, like, if you have a temperature, call this number, don't go in there for 14 days, yada, yada, yada. And then they say, do you have any questions? And I said, no. And they said, you're free to go. I said, okay, I do have one question. Do you need a form of ID to verify that what I put in this form was true? And the guy looked me in the eye and said, nope. And I said, okay. So as far as the state of Florida is concerned, one Seymour Butts has just entered the state.
Amanda Hug and Kiss?
Amanda Hug and Kiss, exactly. Just kidding.
So Len, this story came out yesterday that said that there were 250 out of 500 TSA employees. It may be since March. We don't, there's some correction to that. But did you notice anything in the airport that would indicate that they were worried about that when you got to MCO?
I would say at MCO, it was probably 75% mask compliance. And the infuriating thing to me is to see pilots walking around without masks. And I get at the time it wasn't required. Yesterday or 2 days ago when I was at the airport picking up Laurel, masks were not required in Orange County. They are mandatory now. Okay. If you're a pilot and you're not wearing a mask in an airport, I don't think you have good enough judgment to fly a plane. Like, that should be an automatic disqualifier.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like a principal in a school.
yeah. You're too dumb to fly the plane. Like, the on its face evidence that you.
Well, to be fair, Len, he was drinking at the bar, so he needed.
That's what it was. How am I going to get this gin and tonic down if I'm wearing a mask? That's what it was. Yeah. That was the only thing that just exasperated me. Like, what are you doing there? But other than that, yeah, it was fine. And that wasn't, by the way, that wasn't a JetBlue pilot that I saw. Everyone on JetBlue wearing the masks all the time. It was another airline.
Did they provide like food or beverages on the flight?
Oh yeah. So they'll. You would love this, Chris. It's in a hermetically sealed bag.
Perfect.
You get a bag of chips, a bottle of water, and a granola bar, and each of those is hermetically sealed as well. So multiple layers of safety there.
So you're allowed to take your mask off to eat, or what do you have to like?
Yeah. So it's mask off, eat, mask back on.
So it kind of defeats the purpose in a sense, because at some point you're having the mask
You
off.
don't have to eat it.
True, but it's sort of.
You could save it for later.
One of my relatives said the Boston Restaurant Association has devised a mask that sort of has like a trap door that you can, if you go out to a restaurant, you can eat, a little hole for a straw. A little hole for a straw.
Like a Pez dispenser, just opens up.
No, Chris, this sounds like a character, like a Star Wars character,
Yeah,
right? With a little trap. You should come up with a character.
Well,
that
if you
does
think
this.
about it, like the aliens from the Aliens movies are perfect, right? They just open their mouth, another mouth comes out, eats it, and they're done.
And voila, right? Exactly.
So that's the score.
So that part was fine. Yeah, and then Ubering. When I was Ubering, everybody had a partition in front of them and masks, so that was all fine too.
Mm-hmm. Should we check? Oh, there you go. You stopped moving for a second, Len.
Oh, sorry.
Did you feel comfortable? Did you feel safe on the plane? Were you worried at all? Were you kind of like, or you're Len Testa. You don't care about any, like nothing, none of this stuff ever bothers you. So,
the time I flew before this, there were 7 people on the plane, and that was super comfortable. But with 100 people on the plane was a little bit more than I was maybe mentally ready for. But again, it was fine, and that was 2.5 weeks ago. So,
I will say, just looking at you with the pose that's left on the screen, and hearing you talk is like really a bonus.
I know. Look at the hair.
You're like you're pursing your lips in this shot that you're stuck on.
Sorry, man.
Hey,
very
look.
Thoughtful. Very
nobody's
thoughtful.
coming to look at us. They want to hear us as I'm learning.
Yeah.
But, all right. So you quarantined for 2 weeks, right?
I did. Technically, I didn't have to. So the quarantine law exempts people who are here for commercial activities. Covering theme parks as a commercial activity. I didn't have to, but I did. I quarantined for 2 weeks. And then my quarantine was up last weekend.
So, Len, did you first go to Disney Springs or did you go to Universal first?
I went to Universal, and the reason was I hadn't been in a theme park for 3 months. And I'm going to say this because you guys are my friends. You'll understand it. I feel reassured being in a theme park the way that some other people feel reassured about being in church. Like, I am in a theme park and I feel like everything is going to be okay. So I really wanted to go to a theme park, and I went to Universal. And it was great. You guys will not be surprised. I was the second car in the parking lot, in the parking garage. At,
I'm only surprised it was second.
Know,
That's
right?
the only surprise.
Yeah, especially since you got there the night before.
Another Idle Falls.
Like, what's going on? What's going on? So you go through the parking garage. They do a 2-point temperature check. So forehead and then one of your ears. Absolutely fine.
Was it like that video where they make it look really fun?
It was great. Yeah, everyone was super energetic. It was no problems at all. And then you go through the normal screening for security, for weapons and stuff, and that was a breeze. And then I waltzed over to Universal Studios. The only weird thing that happened was trying to get into Universal. Okay, so Universal, I love you as a theme park. Your signage assumes that everyone can read minds, and I don't have that capability. Okay, so when you walk into Universal Studios, there are guest services windows on either side of the main walkway, and then there's a main walkway that gets you to the front of the park. There were lines for guest services, and I needed an annual pass. I needed to renew, so I got that line. Okay, the line in front of guest services were really the line to get into the theme park split up in two. And there was a separate hidden line for actual guest services somewhere else. Were there any signs saying any of this?
No.
No, there were not. No, again, you should just know this if you're coming to Universal.
So you don't have to book ahead of time, or you did?
Did not. They were not hitting capacity. So I got my annual pass. It was great. And I walked in, and like I say, 100% mask compliance in the theme parks. I did not see a single person trying to flout the mask thing. Everybody, 100% compliance. Hand sanitizers everywhere. Tons of hand sanitizers. The other interesting thing was, so first place I went was to Diagon Alley and to Gringotts. So on all of the outside places, anywhere where you would stand, anywhere where you would congregate in Diagon Alley, whether it's in front of a window to do the wand, whether it's to get in line for a ride or for a shop, there were clearly marked stickers on the ground that said, stand here as a group. And in most cases, they were not only at least 6 feet apart, in some cases, they were 10 feet apart. So they're adjusting for group size. And how are they 10 feet apart? How do you know that? I brought a tape measure, of course.
Of course, this one does.
Yeah, of course.
Is that all that was there? Were like just people who are bloggers, vloggers, and anybody Disney related going to these parks? Is it just all of you standing around with tape measures?
It was it looked like it was all families. Like I didn't see anyone doing what I was doing. Yeah, so.
And were they? I don't know what they call them at Universal. The cast members were they
team members?
Team members, were they reinforcing the social distancing?
100%.
I saw one video. Of course, you could see anything, but I saw one video where people were just in the other Harry Potter ride where they were sort of all just.
So I haven't seen that. I saw it at Volcano Bay, and they said that got corrected pretty quick. The one time I saw, so the team members were all over this. When I got there at 8, the park had an official opening at 9, so I was there for the early entry hour. At 9 o'clock, there's a rush of people coming into Diagon Alley, and there was a little bit of clumping together of people trying to figure out where the line was for Gringotts. But team members were all over that. There were at least half a dozen of them straightening people out, putting them in lines, and in an official line, and making sure that they were socially distant. They were on top of that.
Fill in all available space.
No, they were not saying anything like that. No, they were ensuring that. The other interesting thing was when you're inside the ride, and Chris is wearing a sweater, so this is a great story. When you're inside the ride, you are at least 10 feet from the group in front of you. The markings on the ground are at least 10 feet apart. And the interesting thing about that is, if you think about these rides being in Central Florida, those air conditioning systems are designed to cool off 1,000 hot, sweaty bodies that have just come in from the sun.
Right.
But there aren't 1,000 hot, sweaty bodies in the line anymore coming in from the sun. There's like 100 hot, sweaty bodies. So that means that the air conditioning is basically a meat locker at this point. And it was glorious because it was 93 degrees outside. And I'm telling you, the second time I went through Gringotts, I was standing in the line, like right after the bank vault elevator. I was standing in that line, and I'm thinking to myself, if I was here 10 minutes more, I would want to wear pants. Like I was wearing shorts. And I was like, I can wear pants and maybe,
I'm glad you're wearing
maybe a light, I know, light sweater. Yeah, I know. Something beside these Speedos, I would think. But I would, it was that cold. And then we went on Mummy. Again, super socially distant. The good thing about the line too for Mummy was I got to see all of the fun pre-show stuff.
Yeah, that's good.
That I hadn't seen before. Though that's hysterical.
So, I mean, I love Mummy. Did you have your mask on during that whole thing?
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah, sure.
You had your mask on during the ride.
Absolutely fine.
Wow.
So going back to Gringotts, right? So I get on Gringotts, and the way they're doing, this was my first ride. The way they're doing it is, it's 2 rows of 3 in the ride. So first row was filled, second row is empty, third row, and then same thing. So 1, skip 2, and then 3. Because I was a group of 1, I had the entire first row to myself. There was nobody in row 2. And then if you have a family of, I think that seats 5. There's a family of 5, you can fit in that. So they're running at no more than 2/3 capacity. But the great thing about it was, and this was the highlight of my day, get on the ride, fiddled with the 3D glasses, got my mask on, and the ride started. And as soon as the effects kicked in, I forgot about everything other than the ride that I was on. Like the effects were immersive. I was in the moment. The music was playing. The videos were kicking in, and that's all I was thinking about for 2.5 or 3 minutes. And that felt great.
Awesome. Yeah. Not to worry about anything.
No, it was great.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like if I tell people, should you go to a theme park or not? Dude, those 2.5 minutes, I paid $700 for my annual pass, right? Probably worth it just for those 2.5 minutes after all we've been through for the last 3 months, right? It was a great feeling. And because there were fewer people on the ride, there wasn't as much, talking or screaming or anything. I could actually hear all of the dialogue, and it was objectively probably the best ride I've ever had on Gringotts. Not only because that, it was nice and cool and everything, but the fact that I could hear everything and make sense of the story was just amazing. All right, cool. Sorry about that.
Can I ask a weird question?
Yeah.
So walking through the brick entryway into
Yep.
how do they keep that from getting clogged up and lots of people? And I mean, I know there's a lot less people there. From what I understand, I think they're set at 7,500 people max in the park, and they've only been hitting 4,000 to 6,000 thereabouts.
That's almost exactly right. They hit 7,000 a couple of times. I think they hit their limit Saturday and Sunday. They're very close. So there's actually a team member out front making sure that large groups don't try and go through at the same time.
Oh, okay. So they're keeping. Did you talk to any cast members? How are they feeling about this? I mean, I saw something online. There was a thing about this bartender was being forced back to work, not at the parks, just wherever he was living, and was really upset because people were not paying attention to stuff, that he felt like it was a choice between his income and his life. Did you talk to any cast members? Did they feel kind of a little worried about having to be there? Or, I mean, I know they weren't allowing, like the outside the park. It's probably safer in the parks than going to the local restaurant.
Oh, dude,
right?
I felt completely safe in the parks, and we were joking about this before the call, before we started. I went to Publix yesterday, and there was like 50% mask compliance. I definitely felt worse in public. Like the safest place in Florida right now, I firmly believe this, I'm not joking, is in a theme park, without a doubt.
Or home.
Or home.
Yeah, they're probably setting the protocols that other places are going to use.
Oh yeah. So after we rode, we went in to get something to eat at Leaky Cauldron because I was hungry and I wanted breakfast. And we saw them sanitize all the tables and all the chairs before we got there. Then we ate, and they re-sanitized everything again. and it's the mobile ordering thing, so you don't have to touch anything. It was absolutely fine. The only weird thing was in Leaky Cauldron. Okay, so every theme park is doing this now, where you're using mobile ordering. Right. And the way that Universal has it implemented, it relies on GPS to determine whether you're in the park, and you can only order if you're in the park. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is if you're using GPS and you're indoors inside Leaky Cauldron, the GPS signal can't get to your phone because you've got a ceiling above you. So the Universal app kept telling me I wasn't in the park and therefore I couldn't order. I'm like, I could not be more in Universal Studios right now. But what happens then is they'll take you up one at a time to a special counter. You order, remotely or at a distance from the cashier. You pay, and then they bring you your food. Absolutely flawless. Nothing but positive things to say about my entire time at Universal over the weekend.
So that kind of puts a damper on the question I was going to ask you. Knowing you as I do, and how long you've been looking at and researching and studying theme park operations, then I was going to ask you. Number one, were your expectations exceeded? Number one, and number two, after you were in the park for a while and observing everything, is there anything that you thought could have been done better if you had been put in charge?
In terms of safety or accommodations, things like that, I don't think Universal could have done anything better. I mentioned the signage. Just getting around the park, that could have been better.
That's pre-virus problems.
That's pre-virus stuff. Yeah, that's always been an issue. No, I think they did. I think they did everything right. What was the second part of your question?
Well, you may have already answered. I was going to ask you, if you were in charge, would you have tweaked anything? Would you have done anything in addition to what they had already put in place?
It's funny. The thing that around noon or 1 o'clock. I realized that the things that I would have changed, going into the park, were exactly the same sort of things that I needed pre-virus. I had sunscreen on, but I should have brought more with me. And then two, my feet aren't really in walking 10 miles in a theme park shape right now, and I could have worn better
a couple
shoes.
Of months.
So I know. We've all been basically sitting at home for 3 months. No one's in shape. Actually, I've been running outside, so it's not too bad. But like the problems that I had, or the things that I thought I could have done better, were the same things that I thought I could have done better pre-virus. So in that respect, absolutely fine. Probably the one thing I would have changed with Universal was there were a couple of rides like Rip Ride Rocket where I didn't get a good sense of the wait time from the signage out front. But again, that's a standard Universal thing. The app seemed like it knew what it was doing. Other than that, it was fine.
So I have a very important question. I don't know if you can answer this one, but this is very important to me. Well, kind of along that. Well, we know it's Speedo, right? So did you use the restroom, and what was that like?
I did.
Okay. I know you're probably not in the ladies' room, but the Scribners all have bladders the size of chipmunks, so we need to know.
So the restrooms are set up for social distancing as well.
Weren't they before?
I don't know about the women's restrooms, but do they have walls or partitions?
They have partitions.
No, just kidding. So every other sink can be used.
Okay.
You can't stand in sinks. There's little signs that say, don't use this sink. And there weren't enough men in the bathroom to make social distancing awkward. And as a man, I think we all understand the unwritten rule that you stand as far apart as possible when you're in a restroom anyway. It's what men do.
I was more interested in the cleaning after you were done, or it was.
Oh my God! Yeah. So there was an attendant leaving as I was going in to the restroom. So yeah, it looked like it was spotless.
Okay. Chris, did that change your mind?
No, well, that's the running joke. Is there's just no way in heck I'm going down. I mean, I was scheduled to go down in August. We canceled that trip. I know I asked, but it just doesn't seem like it's fun. Like, it seems like you're
No,
missing a lot.
I'm telling you, once you get on the rides, it's exactly the same as it was. The mask didn't bother me. The virtual queue thing didn't bother me. The mobile ordering thing, not a problem. Even the characters, right? The characters are still available. You just can't hug them. I'm not sure I wanted to hug many of those characters anyway, so it's not a big deal for me, right? I got selfies with Squidward and Patrick from SpongeBob.
But how do you know it's you?
I had a mask on. You can tell it was
I know.
me. So yeah. So it was a normal day in the parks. Once you're in the parks, with the background music playing and the sun shining on you and the smells and the junk food that you eat and the rides, it was pretty close to a normal day. I'm not a huge parade fan either, and I didn't stay for the fireworks, which obviously they weren't running. But we'll see in about 3 weeks or so with when Walt Disney World opens.
What about kids? Did you observe any kids and how
I didn't take any kids. No.
No, I know you didn't take any, but did you or take anybody else's kids?
Didn't steal any kids.
But did you notice? Because I think of the 5-year-old, who's just had it, who's had it anyway because they're tired and it's hot Florida sun. But then this mask.
I made a special point to look at the kids, and again, when I say 100% mask compliance, I mean 100% mask compliance for the kids. And I was especially looking for long-term, use. Like if it's noon, were the kids still wearing masks? And they were. Good.
So I'm thinking, like, I know how my T-shirt feels after a few hours. How is a mask after 3 hours in the hot, humid sun? I mean, did you bring extra masks?
I brought 2.
Okay.
And I've got now multiple kinds of masks. I've got a regular paper mask. And then I've got one with the where the filter is woven in, the washable. And that was super comfortable, actually. It's got the drawstring and everything. I like the masks that go over your ears. I think those are easier, especially with my hair the way it is now. Jeez.
An official guide mask?
Not yet, but soon.
There we go. So yeah, I think we should probably start wrapping it up in there. Mike, you have any last questions for the boss?
No, I want to thank you for putting your life on the line and going to Universal. We're looking forward to talking to you about Disney Springs and other things that have come about this week in the news.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next episode. Thank you for coming, Len.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're going to do Disney Springs and the future of the parks and stuff like that. So we'll leave it there. So on behalf of Len Testa, Mike Scopa, and Dr. Michelle Scribner McLean, we'll see you on the next show.